welcome everybody to tonight's Sunday's Fun Race with Dark Helmet Racing. We are at Sebring, checking out Dano going around the track in the great sunshine state of Florida.
Sebring's a
Tonight,
great track. We got 3.74 miles of racing circuit for those of you on this side of the pond, 6 kilometers for those of you on the other side of the pond. 17 corners, very bumpy track, not much elevation. The drivers should have their hands full tonight.
in that they will, in preparation for a lot of these guys that are going to run the 12 hours of Sebring next weekend, this 2 hour race we'll have today will be a great time for them to improve on their stint skills. Some of them do run 2 hour stints.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be good practice for those guys that are getting ready for the 12-hour coming up. It looks like we have practice coming to an end here, so I think we have a short turnaround and get into qualifying for these guys.
Yes, sir. And now we have a 10-minute qualifying. It looks like it's going to be a lone qualifying today. Here we are at Sebring, temperature of 70 degrees down here, a pretty high humidity as well, being next to the ocean. Partly cloudy skies, a little bit of wind at 7 miles per hour. We have Brandon Dooley out there ripping some laps in the GTP.
It looks like we got 11 entries tonight, mixed in with about 15 AI. Like we said, this is a fun race, and these guys are going to be getting ready for the 12-hour coming up. So these AI that they're going to be working their way around is also really good for, the lap traffic and dealing with other cars as they're coming through during a 12-hour race. So this should be interesting.
That it will be. So this first lap that they're going around, oh, Greg Welch with a slight spin there saves it before the wall, so he'll be able to stay out there with those warmish tires. Randy Cassidy out here looks like he's on his first warm-up lap, his out lap, before he's able to set a time. Looks like lap times are coming in. TJ Majors with a lap of 2 minutes in the GT3 class. Looks like Brandon Dooley just set a lap in the GTP of a 149.16 to start with.
Yeah, Dooley's looking pretty comfortable out there. I know that they're going to be racing the GTP coming up in the 12 hour, and he's looking really strong right now.
And a lot of these people, I don't see a class designation from the normal Sunday races we have with dark helmet racing. So I think some of these people might be new out here tonight, or at least having some fun with some road racing.
Yeah, that's highly possible. I haven't really seen the separation in classes yet and who was running what, but I would say Rich Hibbs is definitely running the GTP class, putting in a time of a 151.9. That'd be a little quick for the GT3 out there.
And it looks like we have one solo person in the LMP tonight, so Gray Welch will be the one to watch in the LMP, driving in his own class tonight.
Yeah, I'd like to see Gray get a win in that class tonight. That'd be huge for him.
I think you said you wanted to see Aussie Greg Hill get a good finish tonight, and he has put the first lap under 2 minutes in for that GT3 class.
Yeah, for sure. Aussie Greg Hill is on another level tonight. Getting under that 2 minute mark is really quick. Is now we see Morgan Teague go up to the top of the board in the GTP class with a 48.8. They're starting to move now.
Looks like Patrick Matt had a little off track here, but some of these corners are so fast. So when you come out of them, you just naturally want to fade outside of it, and you get in those light dirt patches.
Yeah, and especially in the GT3, when you have these little switchbacks at the end of these, you're really trying to straight line it as much as possible and keep that wheel straight and get the power to the ground. So every now and then you'll see these guys just dip a wheel and the curb will catch it, kind of pulls the car off to the side, but they'll get that dialed in for the race.
Gray Welch finally setting a time in that LMP class. And he is first indeed with a 154, so about 5 seconds difference per class here.
It's definitely interesting. I was wondering how the new tire model on these GTPs and LMPs would work out. The rumor was, it was going to slow them down about 3 to 5 seconds a lap. And sure looks like it has done that as the gap is definitely closed up.
I think before the tire update, I did see, I believe it was 144s in practice sessions, and if we're looking at 147s tonight, then you are right on that. It has definitely slowed them down a little bit.
It's definitely interesting also to see how the new tire model's working with these guys is lap after lap. They're, clicking it off and getting faster and faster as the time goes.
And that's almost it for qualifying. We have about half a minute left. See if anybody's still out there running a lap.
I'm curious to see what Richard Washone can do tonight in the Ford Mustang. Is these Newcomers here seem to be putting in some quick laps. I see that he did a 201.7, which I expect him to find a little bit more pace during the race and make his way through the field. So we'll see how that goes.
In the final seconds of qualifying, so that'll be wrapping up here very shortly, and then I believe it's a brief wait, maybe about 20 seconds before we get gridded up. All right, so on the grid tonight, we have Morgan T going to lead it off for the GTP class in first, Brandon Dooley in second, GTP, Rich Hibbs in the GTP in third, Troy Banks, Gab Chavez, both in the GTP as well. Then we have our first LMP and only LMP and last LMP on the grid, Gray Welch, sixth place.
In the GT3 class, Aussie Greg Hill is going to start in first. Alongside him will be TJ Majors. Second row will be Nathan Wright and John Henry. Christian Challoner and Susan Flint are going to be in the third row. Matt Holden and Ben Reagan
Reminder
behind them.
that damage is
Greg
off.
West and Alex Sanders.
So if you have an
Chris
off-track excursion, you can
Wiedner
keep going.
and Ryan Merriam will be in the next row.
And we should be getting ready to grid up now. Cars should be starting to roll on the track.
I think row 9 is going to be the one to watch tonight. That's Richard Washone and Rick Washone. They're going to be back there in row 9 in the GT3 class. And it'll be interesting to see how far up they can get through the pack, as I think this will be really good practice for them for the 12-hour coming up.
Yeah, those two guys are generally pretty quick no matter what track they're on, so they should be slicing and dicing tonight. Looks like we're about to come to the start line, and we're off with the GTPs leading the way.
Morgan Teague's going to lead him into turn 1, and out of turn 1, Rich Hibbs dives down the inside here. Can he make the move? Nope, he's going to fall back in line here.
Looks like a pretty clean start from everyone. GT3s there in front. You can see that GTP class slowly getting away. That LMP trying to get away from those GT3s.
That's got to be kind of nice for Gray right now, right? You got a little bit of a gap in front of you. You got a little bit of a gap behind you. You don't really want to be in no man's land, but also that first lap chaos. It can be nice to just have the track to yourself. Gab Chavez had a little spin out there. I seen him going through the grass. It looks like hopefully he can recover that car. I believe we do have damage off tonight, so he should just be able to rejoin the track safely and make his way to the field.
Looks like this was right before the crash. Let's go back to previous. So this is how Gab Chavez got off track. Just a slight spin there.
Oh, that looks like that new tire model coming into effect right there. Just didn't have enough heat in the tires to hold it around that corner and just lost the rear end.
We got 3 wide down the backstretch at Sebring. Going into this corner is a very fast corner as well, so you got to be really cautious, especially with all the bumps we have through it as well.
That's always a tricky spot to be in, and when you're one of the GT3s, right? You're coming down that straightaway. You're 3 wide. Everybody's trying to get to the final turn first. Who's going to brake latest? And then here comes an LMP blowing your doors off down the inside. Looks like we got some action up front. I see Morgan Teague has a little bit of a gap of about 3 seconds. And Brandon Dooley him and Rich Hibbs have dropped back and look like they're picking their way back through the GT3s now.
And it looks like Brandon Dooley had a little off-track excursion. Ooh, that tire model probably again just on the power a little too much, and it just sends you right around.
It's a good thing it's happening, in this race. Like we said, this is going to be great practice for these guys for the 12-hour coming up because, he won't make that mistake again. Brandon's a great driver, and you know that he'll lock in for the rest of this race and work that out. On the note, though, there's Ray Welch. He's just picking up the pieces as these guys fall back. He's just picking them off one by one.
And although he's the only one in his class, he is beating a couple GTPs because of those mistakes as well. So any mistake from any class can really impact the rest of your race by being behind these slower class cars.
For sure. But they're going to come back by him, and then he's going to hopefully go back by them at some point. And at the end of this 2-hour race, if he beats any of the GTPs, he's got the bragging right.
And not many bragging rights there as they both go around him into the hairpin.
Yeah, I think if he wanted to, he could have defended that a little better. But I think he was just being nice, separate classes. He's letting Brandon and Rich, have their own battles. They work their way back forward. So that was nice of him. This GT3 action has gotten good, though. A lot of GT3 cars out here. Not much separation between these guys. As, they're all just running bumper to bumper. And it's really close racing right now.
Surprised to see the mixture of GT3 cars here as well. We have Ferraris, BMWs, Fords, Porsches, Lamborghinis, Audis, Acuras, McLarens, Corvettes. I mean, there's just so many.
I didn't catch what happened here at the beginning of the race, but I see Richard Michon is 16 seconds back. But he also just ran a 2:01.8, which is the second fastest GT3 on track right now. So I'm not sure if he had a little bit of trouble early on or what happened.
Looks like Rick was shown there in the GT3. Just got collected in that first turn chaos, and that turn is so fast that if you do get hit, you're just being sent in whatever direction you get hit from, basically. And he ended up catching the wall there.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of the scarier first turns. It's really wide and really fast, but it's also bumpy and narrows at the end of it. And everybody's just kind of sending it in there. Who can be the last one to break? And just someone got a little sideways, clipped in, and that was all she wrote.
Looks like we're showing with another quick off track. This time, not as bad. Just overshoots the corner a little bit. Gets right back on track.
He didn't even sweat that. Just hold the loud pedal wide open and hammer down and get back on track, and you're good to go.
Morgan Teague still leading this race by a good margin of 5.5 seconds so far. So slowly pulling away from Troy Banks in second.
Yeah, for sure. Tigi's just putting in lap after lap, just really consistent. 47s. I see some 47s, 48s here and there from, some of the other guys, and he's just been consistently just knocking out the laps one after another and just opening up a comfortable lead right now.
Closest battle we have for the GTPs right now is between Brandon Dooley and Rich Hibbs, who both got collected a little earlier and are trying to make it back up towards Banks and Teague. Ooh, Brandon Dooley off track a little bit there.
Yeah, I talked about straight lining those exits a little earlier here, but I think he straight lined that one a little too much. Maybe he's doing a little Mario Kart racing and tried to throw some gravel out there in front of Hibbs, slow him down a little bit, open up a little more of a gap. Checking back in here with the GT3 class. Looks like those guys are still running nose to tail, bumper to bumper. No real movement. Ryan Merriam, he's made up a few places since the beginning, but he just closed into the back of this pack, and there's not a whole lot of room to work with.
As you say that, there is a battle on his hands.
And Nate, you've done plenty of driving, testing and stuff, and putting the AI on and riding with that. Like we said, these guys have AI on tonight, and you know how stubborn they are and how hard they are to move. What do you think these guys are dealing with when they're trying to pass these guys?
It's always about knowing who you're racing against, right? Whether it's AI or actual people racing in that car, you have to know what they're going to do and what corners, where they're faster, where they're slower, and really find those chances for opportunity there. And once you get to know that after a lap or two, then maybe you can pull the trigger on getting that pass through. But if you can't wait that long, then you do have to take those gambles. Like, oh, and it looks like Ryan goes around the first corner. That corner is so fast and slick.
Yeah, that's tough, because we just watched him do exactly what you talked about. He was behind those guys, finally set him up and made the move, worked the entire lap, inside, outside, finally gets by the guy, and then just trying to make up that gap, it looked like, the next group, and just sent the rear end around turn one.
So with that spin by Ryan, Ben, and Sean do get clear of them for the 16th and 17th place overall.
Now, do you know if, with the damage turned off for this race, as it is a fun race for these guys, do they still have to deal with the tire wear?
I believe tire wear is still a thing, especially with heating up and cooling down the tires. So if you just roast the tires, then your car will perform a little differently than just normally racing around the track.
Yes, I was wondering because we've seen, Ryan crash there, and that slide, obviously, on a track like this is going to take, half a lap before he finally starts getting some traction back in those tires. So that's a big thing still. Could also see Greg Hill battling with Nathan Wright. Also see Greg in the Mustang there. Let's see if this is the most pressure it looks like he's had all race.
And when people talk about Sebring, they usually talk about the Audi RA or the Lamborghini Huracan doing very well here. But surprisingly, some of these other cars, like the Mustang's pretty good top speed for the most part, so it pulls on the back stretch and the front stretch. And then that BMW just decent overall, I feel like.
Yeah, it's been a couple seasons since we've really seen the BMW be at its peak power. Another car that I actually really like around here is the Porsche. It handles really well. The switchback, straight lining, exits. Uh, the track temps are usually pretty high, so the traction comes in very handy in that car. The long straights there at the end of the track, it struggles a little bit with, but it's not so bad. I'm surprised that we only have one of those out here tonight, and that's Patrick Hamad.
I believe there is one more Porsche out there, but it is AI, so Patrick, the only real driver in the Porsche tonight. Some tracks that Porsche, the back end just likes to step out of nowhere, so you got to be really careful and always feel where you're at on the track.
I feel like when you said that, you were specifically meaning turn one.
Turn 1 or the last turn there, turn 17, yeah, definitely.
Oh, here we go. Tiggy is now up into the lap traffic with these GT3s. I've seen him flashing his lights. I don't know if that's some code with these AI that maybe they'll get out of your way, but I highly doubt it. He's going to have to work to get around these guys.
It is actually true though, Ricky. They had that AI update for iRacing where I forget if they can see you flashing your headlights, but as they come up behind you, they'll actually flash their headlights at you if you are lap traffic or in a different class.
That's one awesome thing about iRacing, man. They're always making improvements to everything, and that is pretty cool. Is Iggy, man, he's just on another level right now. He's just clicking off the laps, and as you can see, now that he's in the traffic here, he's being patient, picking his spots to get by these guys.
It looks like the battle between Dooley and Hibbs has picked back up. So going through this lap traffic, there is a lot of opportunity for Hibbs to take those risks and get even closer to Dooley.
Now, if you're Hibbs here, and you see this traffic up in front of you, do you try to use that as a pick to get by, or you hang back and just hope that, maybe Brandon gets caught up by one or has to run wide and makes a mistake and you can just go through it? Do you try to force it, or do you just be reactive and wait?
Reactive is better because if you're Dooley up there, he knows he has to get around these guys as quick as possible to pull away from Hibbs. And that's a lot of pressure. So if he doesn't do that, then his mindset's not right. And the slower class typically stays on the racing line, so he should know where to go. But if there are people battling in the GT3 class, as an example, then he has to be very cautious of what they might do in their own little battle.
Yeah, that right there was a perfect example. As we saw Brandon send it into the last turn to get around those guys, and then Rich was just kind of stuck behind three of them following through the last corner, and it actually allowed Brandon to open up, a 2.5 second gap. That was a close call for Brandon. That might have been a code brown moment there as he was getting around that lap traffic. Came out of that turn and he was sitting in the middle of the track and he had to swerve around him last second.
I do believe they are catching up to Troy Banks, who is sitting second right now in the GTP class. And Troy Banks has his hands full with a bunch of this lap traffic.
I was just looking at that and I was thinking we had not talked about Troy Banks yet. And it's a little bit of a disservice. In our typical Sunday night league, Troy Banks is one of the silver drivers. Morgan, Brandon, Rich, they're all the platinum drivers. And you see Troy out here, he's still running second. He's holding his own. He's running a really good pace. And I know that Brandon and Rich are slowly gaining on him a little bit here and there. But we don't know if that's him saving tires, if he got held up by traffic, what it is. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts when these other guys get up to him, if they get to him.
Yeah, I've battled with Troy Banks at least a few times going for that silver division top person. So he is a pretty good driver and he can compete up there with this pro class that we see in here tonight.
It'll also be interesting to see, as he's the only one in the Acura GTP right now, and the other guys are mostly in the Ferraris. It'll be interesting to see, how the cars perform over the stint. Does he have more fuel? Does he have more traction? Can they go longer? Do they have pressure tires? Just something to keep an eye on.
You can slowly see Brandon Dooley reeling in Banks. And Banks right there gets a little stuck behind the GT3 out of the corner, which makes him lose speed down the whole entire backstretch. So that allows Dooley to get right behind him now.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed that Brandon has been really good at is picking and choosing when he's getting by these GT3s. Sometimes you'll see him be a little more aggressive and throw it in there to get by so he doesn't get held up. And I've seen Rich just kind of get stuck behind him in some of these switchback sections where it's really tight in one line. You can't go around them because then they have the inside. And it's really kind of hurt him as he's about 3.5 seconds back now. But we'll see if he can close that gap up.
And there is one more way to catch up to somebody other than battling through the other classes, is actually battling with your own class. So as Dooley catches Banks, we'll see how hard he fights.
Banks was a little wide around that hairpin, trying to straight line that exit. Brandon got a really good drive as now he's right up on his rear end.
Little scary thing too, because the fastest GTP time set so far in this race is by Brandon Dooley with a 47.5, as where Banks is at a 48.1 for his fastest.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see, Brandon's been really good down these last two sections, getting onto the long straight. and getting out of the final corner. It'll be interesting to see if he can close the gap and get up beside him in the turn one.
Fastest GTP last lap was Rich Hitch, so he's inching every 10th, every lap.
Yeah, like you said, it depends if these guys try to battle and get by. If Brandon thinks he's faster and throws it down the inside and they fight through the corner, that can slow them down. But Troy actually had a 48.5 last lap compared to his best lap in the session is a 48.1, so he's still running a really good race pace. This is where it gets tricky. If you're Troy, you just gotta keep driving your lines, stay out of the rearview mirror, and just make Brandon have to go the hard way to get around you. Minimize the mistakes. Don't leave the door open going into one of these turns. Don't miss an apex, and just make Brandon have to work to get by you.
And with that draft Dooley has, are you surprised he's not getting around him on these straightaways?
I've been trying to watch the cars, and the Ferrari looks a little more stable through the corners, but the Acura looks like it has really good power down the straights. Uh, I watched him come out of the last turn, and Brandon was right up, sucked in behind him. I really thought he was going to make a run down in the one, but it didn't look like he was able to close the gap. But who is closing the gap is Rich Hitch.
Oh, looks like Banks with some issues has to go to the pits. Let's see if we can get a replay on that.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I was just watching Hibbs and the lap time that he put in, and oh, looks like maybe brake failure. Not sure.
Yeah, he just had to stop there.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for him because he was running really well, but I didn't see any major mistake that would cause, damages off to have to tow, so something else must have happened, and hopefully the pit crew can get that car fixed up and back on track for him.
I think in this GT3 class, they are all so close back here. Patrick Hammond trying to make some moves, goes to the inside and gets it done. And Randy Cassidy.
Yeah, lurking just behind them is Ryan Merriam and Richard Bouchon. So it won't be long before all of those guys are battling, and those are our regular drivers, because they're going to be not only fighting each other, but maybe they can work together to get through some of these AI races that we have tonight. There's Richard. We haven't seen a whole lot of him, but like we said early on, I think something happened because he was pretty far back off the back of the pack, but not for long. He is closing in, and he has been running really good lap times up to this point, so we'll see if he can make any moves.
Yeah, his fastest lap, he's ran a 2:01.6. And a lot of these guys are only running 2:02, so he'll be slowly getting up there.
And we're also 27 minutes into this race, which is 2 hours. I'm not sure how long these GT3s will go on a full tank of gas right now. Um, if they can get to the 1 hour mark, then they only need one stop. It's possible that they can only get 57, 58 minutes. And maybe some of these guys are actually lifting, coasting, and fuel saving so that they can just one stop this race.
Here we go. You saw a couple of those GT3s battling. Patrick goes up to the inside and gets spun out by one of them. That's one of the risks that maybe shouldn't have been taken.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier, right? With knowing who you're racing and stuff like that, is these AIs, and they don't care if you're in the way or if you're trying to move them out of the way. They hold their line and they will go through you and you will not go through them.
Two people that did get through, though, Ryan Merriam and Richard Vachon, back to back.
Yeah, and speaking of back to back, I see Gray Welch is now caught in the back of this pack there, and his LMP is, he's just out here having a cruise, leading his class, having a good old time.
Plays it smart too, taking them down a straightaway instead of in the corners. It's always the safest option.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see these guys in the faster cars, they have the speed and they don't want to get held up by the GT3 through the corner. So they end up throwing it in side by side or running it in deep, and then you end up messing up, your line, their line, and everybody ends up being slower. They have so much more pace on the straightaway. Just don't compromise your line, get through the corner, go by down the straightaway, everybody's happy. Battles heating up here with Richard Rochon and Ryan Merriam, as it looks like Teague has also joined this battle. You're trying to get through these GT3 lap traffic.
Teague will get through with ease, not affecting this battle.
Race time. I'm assuming that these guys are running full endurance length fuel. We're just over the 30-minute mark, and I haven't seen any of the GT3s, come in for a pit yet. I imagine that some of these guys are definitely going to try to one-stop this.
This should be possible. Typically, a GT3 tank of fuel lasts roughly an hour, so if you are fuel saving, which there's a lot of opportunity to do here, then you could go to that hour and possibly a couple laps after. And a different story of fuel. When we talk about GTPs, I believe they're roughly 45 minutes, so they might need a couple stops this race, along with the LMPs or somewhere in between those. Rochelle going a little bit off track, but saves it, gets right back on.
Richard, he's wanting to move forward, but he's got a mirror full of other GT3s as Dano's still right behind him. And here comes Dooley and Hibbs also coming.
Oh, little contact between Hibbs and Sean there.
That was just a, hey buddy, I didn't know if you were bored, wake up. Let's get going. Follow me. Ibs taking the wide line around that corner. A little bit of a green lane. No big deal.
See the time loss between Dooley and Hibbs there. I believe Hibbs lost about half a second getting through that traffic.
Yeah, and I don't think either of these guys are holding back. The last couple laps I've been watching the lap times here, and they've been trading 47s back and forth. One lap Rich does the 47, the next lap Brandon responds with a 47. I think Brandon's equally trying to drop Rich as much as Rich is trying to catch him. And they might both be trying to catch Morgan out front.
Well, it looks like Rich was shown, went off track. Let's see what happened to him. Oh, not off track. He actually spun in that last corner. In that last corner, there is a bump. And it is very difficult to feel the car and make sure you don't unsettle it.
Just a little bit of a power slide there. Yeah, he did enter the pit lane. So I'm wondering if he is looking at the fuel and deciding that they are not going to be able to make it to the 1 hour mark, and he's going to have to two-stop this anyways, where now he can just get out of that traffic and run his own pace and maybe get it back. This GT3 battle has been fun to watch. Ryan has just been sandwiched in here. Every now and then, it's with a couple AI drivers. Once in a while, he's got another one of our regulars in there with him. But he's just been smack dab in the middle of two cars this entire race.
Crazy thing is, the only Chevy Corvettes we do have out here are all in this battle right now.
And they are being hounded by the Mercedes down that long straight. As you can see the straight line power of that car. See Morgan Teague just pumped in the fastest lap of the race now with a 47.515. He extended that gap a little bit, and man, he is flying right now.
Looks like Ryan was able to get around one of the Corvettes and still has one more to work with, and the Mercedes gets around the Corvette as well.
It looks like our round of pit stops might be coming up. I'm not sure, but Nathan Wright has also just entered the pit lane for his pit stop at a P2.
Yeah, there's a lot of those guys coming in. Ryan going up the charts with all that AI pitting.
Patrick's still out there putting in his laps, trying to recover from his spin earlier.
He's had some good battles though. He's out there having a lot of fun.
Yeah, and at this point, you know, you don't know if he knows all those guys came in for their pit stop. He might think that he's still, you know, trailing pretty far behind, and then next thing you know, he's gonna have his pit stop and he's gonna come out and be smack dab in the middle of a battle where he thought he was just out there in La La Land by himself.
One person we haven't really talked about is Gab Chavez. I believe he's the only BMW GTP out here right now.
Yeah, it's a real bummer that we saw him go off there on lap 1 and end up back in the GT3 class because his lap times have been on pace with Hibbs and Dooley, and it'd have been good to see him up there in that mix also. But again, he's probably getting some good data for the 12-hour coming up, so there's always that.
And Gab Chavez has always been up there battling in the GT3 class, up there with the pros and the top of the silvers. So he definitely has speed he can throw down.
Absolutely. Let's not forget, you know, our Sunday night league is a GT3 league, so a lot of these guys that are running the GTPs or the LMPs tonight, we're not used to seeing them in these cars, and I don't know how frequently they drive these cars. Some of these guys could be first timing it, getting ready for the 12-hour. They could just be running it for fun tonight because this is just a fun race for us. But either way, it is cool to see the multi-class back.
And in these GTP cars, it always seems like you're on that edge, you're finding that limit in them, and you have to do that to go fast. So switching from a GT3 to a GTP is actually quite different.
Yeah, I'll let you handle that one because, oddly enough, I have not driven the GTPs or the LMPs in here yet. Just been focusing on the GT3 on that side of things, and I'm afraid if I get more horsepower and more downforce, I won't want to go back. So we just haven't made that transition yet.
I think Troy Banks needs a driver swap. You should get out there right now. Oh, Gab Chavez with a spin.
Oh, you just lost the rear coming around there. You know that he's just looking and wanting to make up that gap and try to close the gap, and just getting on it a little too early on the exit of that corner. As Rich Hibbs is back in the rear of Dooley and just set the fastest lap of the race with a 47.2. Don't look now, Brandon, but Rich is coming hard. These guys have got to be getting close to their pit window here. I wonder if we'll see these guys just running as long as they can, or if one of them will try to go for the undercut and try to make that work.
And that window is 40 to possibly 50 minutes if they do some fuel saving, but you never know with these drivers. Oh, Hibbs getting over the bump, losing control of that car. Just unsettles it and straight into the wall. If damage was not off, he would have to tow after that one.
Yeah, I seen him come out of the last turn and they were getting really close to that wall. And I couldn't tell if he clipped it a little bit going over that bump from that angle, or if it was just that bump unsettled the car a little bit. But that's a bummer, man. He lost all that time in the GT3 traffic, spent laps closing what was just a 3-second gap, and now he gets there, and now we have this, and now he's got another 5-second gap or so that he's got to close back up. It's going to be a long race.
Looks like Gray Welch coming into the pits. If you're Morgan Teague with that 15-second lead over second place, are you worrying about strategy at all still, or are you just pedal to the metal trying to get as far away as you can?
I think about 15 seconds, that's a little bit of, the tricky area, and you just have to commit to what you started with. It's a big enough gap that if you've stretched it out this far, you keep going and try to open up the gap and get, a tire advantage now. If you have an extra 20-second gap, even on a splash and dash, you can take 4 tires, get the new tires, and get back out on track, and you have that gap. Or you take this gap and just put it in cruise control, keep the car on track, and just settle into a pace where you're not losing time in something that's manageable.
While we were chatting there, looks like Gab Chavez had a slight crash. Going into this last corner, gets on the brakes. It just kind of loses it under braking through that corner. Maybe a little too much power going to the apex of that. Power too early.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. It looks a little bumpy on entry, and it almost looked like he caught a bump just as he started to turn in, and it just got the rear of the car light, and the front wheels turned, and the rears just wanted to keep going straight.
Up in second place now for the GT3 class is Ryan Marion. Slowly but surely making it up there. And those AI that have pit already, I'm not sure if they always pit early and they don't go the full stint or what's going on there.
Yeah, because we saw a bunch of them, make their way down pit lane in about 37 minutes into this race. So it'll be interesting to see if, these other guys, if they can extend it to the hour mark. Because if so, then they can definitely get to the end on a one stop, and those other guys will still have to pit one more time.
We saw Gray Welch lapping a bunch of GT3s earlier, and now he is just dropping in the pits. Not sure what's going on with Gray there.
Yeah, I'm not sure there. I was checking back through our SDK here, and I'm not seeing anything as far as a crash or an off track or anything, so I'm not sure what happened. what could have been for Dooley. Oh, as he comes into the pits now for their pit window, that's at 47 minutes, and Rich Hibbs is going to follow him in. Be interesting to see if these guys do take tires and full fuel, or if anybody decides to, under fuel. Maybe Hibbs close that gap up a little bit here.
Looks like Chev is going around again. Oh, and he must have lost it on that second to last turn there. Let's see if we can get a rewind of that. So he comes around this last corner, tries to put the power down a little too much, spins it, and somehow gets the car almost upside down.
Yeah, that was a close one there. I wonder if he is just, at this point, just trying to find as much pace as he can now for, to get ready for whatever he's got coming next. Because unfortunately, he is a lap behind at this point. So I imagine, and we've seen quite a few mistakes, which is uncharacteristic from him. So I'm guessing he is just trying to find the maximum pace that he can out of that car.
Looks like Teague into the pits for leader of GTP. Not too many close battles here with any real drivers, but the AI still has a freight train coming through. Mark Sherman ripping along back there in the GT3 class. Racing that Chips Ahoy Cookie Monster car in the Acura.
I'm unsure what happened here with Tiki on that pit stop, as he had a stationary time of 1 minute, where Hibbs and Dooley were both stationary for about 42 seconds. That gap is actually closed right up now, as they're all, 4 second. It's only a 4 second gap now.
And it is a practice event, so if he does anything setup wise to the car, maybe simulates a driver swap or just wants a little more of a battle to feel the car out, what it's like in that dirty air, you never know what he might try to do this race.
This is true, but we are racers. And even though it's a fun race, they all still want to win. And if it gets close at the end of the race, I can promise you we will see a good race and all three of them will be going for that win. We hop on board here with Tigi and get through, watch him get through these GT3s. Here we go. As you can see, he's coming out of these corners. He's being patient. He's waiting until he gets on the straightaways to make the moves. Keeps a wide line. Gives them plenty of space so that they don't make contact. Easy pass through there.
I believe that next person is Patrick in the GT3.
This is such a great angle here. Is when we're watching from these other camps, it looks so smooth out there on track, just like a Sunday stroll. And then you get in this cockpit and you can see how much he's working the wheels through the corners, keeping it straight, trying to keep the power in it.
And to your point too, you can see those corrections in that first corner. It's so fast and so easy to lose traction that you do have to correct it. And sometimes go straight to turn still.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, from watching along, it just looks smooth, easy to drive. And then you get in here and you can see how much they are working and how much they are pushing. It really looks like a handful out there to drive.
You can see Brandon Dooley here not too far behind him.
It's a great view there, them up through the gears, flat out through these high-speed corners, and then banging down through the gears, get it rotated around these corners, back on the throttle. It is definitely fun to watch.
You see these GTPs flying past the GT3s, but when they get into corners, they're about the same speed.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is, they're carrying so much speed into the corners and then trying to get it to stick. They're getting the car slowed down, point, shoot, back on the gas. GT3s are entering at a little bit slower pace, slowing down a little earlier and just carrying the momentum through the corners. But if you try to step on it in these things, man, you're going to be doing a 360 in the corner so quick. I have to say, Brandon's setup looks really good. His corner exits are extremely smooth. There's not a whole lot of working in the wheel. He's getting the car straight, keeping the steering straight, and able to get the power down. He's getting a lot of traction off those corners, and it looks like he's closing the gap a little bit.
And he does set that car up pretty quick on corner exit, which allows him to get on that power, like you said. And then in that background, I don't know if you noticed, but Hibbs is still right there with them.
Yeah, absolutely. We just have to hope that, for our sake and the viewers' sake, that when he gets there, we don't see any more mishaps and dropping back. It hasn't been anything major, but the consistency that these guys are running, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, that's a lot of ground to have to make back up.
back in the GT3 class, it looks like Patrick was able to get around Ryan through the pits.
Yeah, I had just noticed that those guys have come in and made their pit stops now. And like you said, they are just under that 1 hour mark. So they're just under halfway. So they're still going to need to pit, which actually brings some of the guys that pit early like back into this now.
From this angle, you can actually see how bumpy this track is as that tire goes up and down.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I've lived close to here. You would think it would be one of my favorite tracks. And it has grown on me a little bit, but I used to not be a fan of this place as it's just so incredibly bumpy all the way around. I can see Florida sinkholes just opening up out there out of nowhere.
On board with Patrick here. You can see the GT3 is not going as fast, a little more time to react through the corners, but you still see a little correction here or there.
Yeah, we're on board with the Porsche, which is one of the most stable cars on the corner exit. It does tend to understeer a little bit on corner entry, mid corner if you get on the throttle. And then, like you said, it can also really quickly snap oversteer on you and lose the rear end. I like that line through the final turn. Nice wide entry. Get it back tight at the end of the corner across the apex, back out to the wall. Definitely a good line, but it gets really bumpy when you get out there by that wall and about the mid corner, and you got to be really patient through there. We go down through these little switchbacks, try to straight line those as much as possible. Back down the second gear around here. Back up through the gears for this long straightaway down into the turn 7 hairpin. Into the braking zone, back down through the gears, probably down the first gear around here. Try to straight line this over the curb, through the dirt. Back up through the gears into these fast switchbacks.
We have a battle on our hands. Dooley and Tiki now right next to each other. It looks like Tiki might have had a slight off track, which enabled Dooley to get right up on him.
Now we just need bigger numbers on the car so we can tell which one is which out there, as these guys are obviously teammates, probably for the 12-hour coming up, running the same car on the same piece of real estate out there right now.
Oh, and that got a little close there with that GT3 there. That's Mark Sherman in the GT3. Tiki was a little unsure, sent it, and then Dooley was even more unsure and ended up sending it.
Yeah, he definitely stuck it in there. You could tell he did not want to lose any time to Tiki, so he just kind of threw it in there and hoped that Mark was going to be able to hold that line on the outside and that they weren't going to hit. But now these guys are side by side coming across the start.
And side by side into this first corner is very scary, especially if you keep it there.
Oh, Brandon doesn't want to risk it and run too wide. He backs off, falls back in behind. Probably a good idea is, like we said earlier, it's really wide around turn one, but it closes up really quick on exit. I think Brandon's gonna get another shot here really soon. As you can watch these guys, and the car just looks a little more planted and stable on corner exits, and he's getting a really good drive on them. A little slide for Tigi out of that corner exit. Brandon's gonna get right in behind him here. Let's see if he can dive down the inside into this turn. No, he's just gonna follow him through there and look for another opportunity. The other thing to keep an eye out for is if these guys do start battling and running side by side, Hibbs is gonna be right up in there in no time.
Speaking of Hibbs, for the second lap in a row, he's been at least 3/10 quicker than both of these guys.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how much pressure does Brandon want to apply to Morgan, as it looks like all of the pressure, and how much can Morgan defend it. If he defends too much, like coming into this turn right here as they're side by side, this is gonna give Rich, you know, oh, contact. Oh, what a save.
And you notice Tiki goes to the inside of these corners, so he does not want Dooley going up that inside of his, and he's able to protect every single corner he's done that so far.
And obviously that's going to give him a little slower apex speed. And you're going to see is this lap here, Rich is just 2 seconds back now. He's cut the gap in half already on just this lap alone. So we're going to have a three-way battle here for the lead soon. With it being your teammate, and he has caught you, you run the risk of letting him through, not giving up more time, and follow him and try to pick up on the line choices that he has? Or do you try to hold him off for as long as possible because you don't want him to get by and get away from you?
It is good. Oh, Dooley locking up through that corner, ends up losing it and losing time on Tiki there. But I think battling's good just for that practice of knowing what you can do with the car, and it kind of forces it on a different limit, especially trying to get around the outside through these corners because Tiki keeps holding the inside.
Yeah, for sure. And these are guys that we're not used to seeing mistakes like this out of. Obviously, they are pushing the cars and they are learning the limits of these, especially with the new tire model, what they can do, when they can do it. And they're just flicking off the laps, and going to be a three-way battle here for the lead soon.
Another thing too is endurance racing. It's not really pushing too hard or worrying about too much for a position unless if they're holding you up. It's more about staying with the leader for as long as possible, and then you don't need to make that move until basically the last lap of the race.
While that might be true for, for the 12 hour at the start, we're down to almost 40 minutes left in this race, 50 minutes left in this race, so we're inside the last hour. This is the point where these guys are going to be positioning themselves for their last pit stop and getting ready for that last sprint to the finish.
Yeah, definitely after that last pit stop, you do want to be in command of the race, so you do want to be in that first position.
Let's not forget, on the first round of pit stops, Morgan did go either a lap or two longer than both Hibbs and Dooley. And we'll be able to see if that comes into play on this last pit stop and how much fuel he needs to take if he can get off pit lane faster or not.
Looked like Dooley was trying to size up that inside of Tigi, but there's a little lap traffic there, so I think he backed off.
Yeah, and that last lap, Brandon was down into 48s again. Is the lap before we saw him make that mistake around the final turn, and there was a little bit of a gap, so he had a little bit of clear track to actually close that gap back up, and he's definitely the fastest car on track at the moment.
But if he can never get around, then he's only gonna get slowed back up, which always gives him the opportunity to get back up to them.
Absolutely. Getting there is one thing, but what can you do once you get there is a whole nother ballgame.
That's true. You got to join that battle and try to take that risk that Dooley hasn't yet.
Oh, and Tigi's going to slide out as the car finally comes to a stop. It looks like he's beached on that curb a little bit, but that was an unfortunate incident right there for him. He did get it back going, and now we did see him get up to a 15-second lead earlier, right? So now I think it's going to be hammer time, pedal to the metal, and let's see if he can now close this gap back up as those guys did earlier.
Patrick's still out here ripping. He is in no man's land right now.
This is always a tough place to be in when you're out there in a race. You got a 2-hour race, something happened early on, and now you are just out here grinding laps, essentially by yourself. You can't see anybody in front of you or behind you, and you're literally just racing the stopwatch lap after lap.
With longer endurance races too, once you have a crash or a spin, then any little thing can affect the outcome of the race and your strategy that you put in place for it.
Yeah, I know some teams, we have spent a lot of time building stint plans and strategy and when we're going to do what. And then someone goes out in the first stint and you pick up some damage and you throw the whole thing off. And then you got to be getting, building it on the fly as you go. And things can always go wrong and you got to be able to adjust to it.
pretty much need a race engineer at that point, so you can do all the planning as a team before, but when you're not in the car, you basically inherit that race engineer trying to strategize the rest of the race and helping your current driver with whatever they need.
Yeah, and I don't know that any of these guys have race engineers here tonight. So they're just going to be doing the math in their head on when they can pit to get to the end and how much they need to push.
Patrick has a lot of time to think about that as well. So that is one advantage of not being in a battle, is able to think through things without having to worry about any objects on the track.
The downside is, though, is we just seen him run wide right there, is you got to keep your focus.
And if you do one calculation that you're like, oh, I'm a lap short of fuel, can I fuel save enough? Is it possible to fuel save that much? And you soon understand that, crap, I'm missing the corner.
Yeah, then all that goes out the window because now you have an extra pit stop to repair damages and 5 minutes of repair times that are not optional.
Mark Sherman out here right behind Patrick, and by right behind I mean a few laps behind him at least, but he's still out here ripping, getting that practice he needs for next weekend.
The Chips Ahoy Cookie Monster out there just making the laps, getting in some data. This is a fun race, and he's still on the track, so he must still be having fun. We should be entering the pit window for the GTPs now. It'll be interesting to see if anybody has a different strategy, if they want to pit early and get to the end, or if they want to stick it out for as long as they can, take less fuel.
And it looks like Hibbs has entered the pits.
It looks like Hibbs and Tigi both entered the pits here.
And Dooley's the only one that stayed out. So the two that pit early right there, it's good for them because they kind of set the tone of how fast they need to get on their outlap, while Dooley has to worry about going fast and not getting caught up in traffic until he pits.
Well, remember, Morgan, he pit a lap later than these guys on the first time. And now he just came into pit. Hibbs was stationary, had a pit time of 54.8. And Morgan was only 53 flat. So that extra 2 seconds that he saved right there will be key because he was about 6.5 seconds, 7 seconds behind Brandon and about 3 seconds behind Rich going into the pit stop. looks like we lost Morgan.
Yeah, it looks like Morgan Tiki had a crash. Let's check that out. So here's Morgan. Looks like going into this first corner, carrying a lot of speed, lining up, getting around this GT3. GT3 cuts in just a little more than what he thinks. Maybe a little too much speed going in there, but not good news for him.
No, that's definitely unfortunate because he was not that far back. He was not out of this race yet. So that is unfortunate to see. Luckily, no damage because a wreck like that smash into the wall, that'll put you out of a race real quick. So we see Rich Hibbs fighting his way through about the entire pack of GT3s, which are still all together battling.
I believe that's still all the AI battling too.
Yeah, there are 5 cars still battling within 1.2 seconds from the first car to the last car.
Just a little fun fact, the drivers we have out on the track are all pro for the Sunday night races except for Mark Sherman from the Browns track.
This is a good time for a little bit of a plug for anybody that is watching along. The Dark Helmet Racing League Sunday Night GT3 Series. Always a fun one. We got 3 different divisions: the Platinum class, the Silver class, and the Bronze division. Everyone, has a shot to win, and it's always fun racing. A lot of good guys, a lot of good battling, and it's always a good time. I'm curious on what the take was for Rich and Morgan to both pit that early. Like we said, Morgan did go the lap longer, and Brandon still hasn't come in for his final pit stop yet. Obviously, those guys could have went longer, but what did they see to both pit on the same lap that early?
I mean, it always comes down to strategy, right? So, like, I've had races where I want to race as long as I can just so I can do a splash and dash. But at the same time, there's some other races where I want to pit as soon as possible just to get it out of the way and really focus on catching up.
Absolutely. But like those guys were both in a battle and they both chose to pit at the same time. You would think that the guy behind would see the first guy pit and then opt to stay out. But they must have both thought that that was the optimal time to pit if they both came in at the same time. And I will say, since they have come out of the pits, Rich has definitely closed the gap up a little bit on Brandon. He has shrunk the gap about 3 seconds since his pit stop.
And that could be part of the strategy, right? So if Dooley's not good with just being up front all by his own and he wants to try to catch somebody to gain speed, then he doesn't have that.
Yeah, definitely not. We check. Oh, we got some smoke going up here right in front of.
And as we spoke of when Brandon Dooley has crashed, let's take a look at what happened here. So if we rewind just a little bit more. Oh, it looks like he's trying to overtake the GT3. He goes way too far inside there and attaches to him and ends up spinning and then.
Yeah, that's one of those. That's a tough one right there, right? Because most cases, that GT3 would definitely give you a little more space. And these AI guys, they like to fight for every inch of the track that they can, and they are not going to give you that space. And he wasn't able to move that car out of the way, but here he comes down pit road. Now he had a nice little gap, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get off pit lane ahead of Rich, or if he's going to be between Rich and Morgan.
Because Rich hasn't had any mistakes. So as Dooley is in the pits there, let's take a look at Hibbs and see if he can close this gap.
Here comes Hibbs around the final turn. He's coming down the start straight to start the next lap. Brandon has just left the pit lane, but Rich is going to get by him.
So Rich Hibbs, your new leader, I believe, for the first time this race.
Yeah, and he has had an eventful race, so that's going to feel good for him. Now that he's finally here, he's just got to lock in and keep it till the end of the race, because we know that Brandon is going to be coming for him. But Rich still does have the fastest lap of the race, so he can go that pace.
These endurance races too, you can never expect anything to happen. Well, I guess you could expect anything to happen in these races, as we've seen.
Yeah, it's so easy to make a mistake, in these endurance races, especially, during somebody's first stint when they first get in the car, and you have something and you end up 2 laps down and you think, all right, well, the race is over, we're done for. And then you still have 10 hours of the race left, right? Like anything can happen in these. You just got to stay on track and keep going, because you never know at any moment, somebody can make a mistake, or someone can make a mistake in front of them and just get collected, especially when it's multi-class racing like this. Things are pretty sorted out right now, as Rich has about a 10-second gap over Brandon, who has about a 10-second gap over Morgan right now.
And with Hibbs having such a comfortable lead now, I don't know if he was close on fuel with that stop that he did with Tiki, but if he does need to save fuel, now is definitely a good opportunity.
Yeah, but now he's starting to enter that area where Morgan was at the first stint, where he's got a decent gap, and you keep trying to open that gap up just in case you do have a mistake, as he's had a couple, Morgan's had a couple, and now Brandon's also had a couple. You keep trying to extend that lead and pushing it in case you have any issue, whether it's your fault or just get collected in something unfortunate, or do you back off and pace yourself and make sure that you're just getting clean laps and staying out of trouble?
We did see Tigi have that mishap before, and since Dooley had one, Tigi's actually not as far as behind as what you expect from Dooley now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting here in another lap or two as we start getting lap times coming across the board. Is both Rich and Morgan on their out laps, they were about 149s. And then I know Rich started dipping back into the 47s a couple laps into the stint as those tires came up to temperature. So we'll see what Brandon can do here in another lap or two. If he can, bring the pace down, or is he just settling into the end? As we check in here with Patrick, it is good, to see that we got a couple GT3 guys still out here, turning the laps. Both him and Mark out here just getting their laps in, getting some testing done, doing this fun race and hanging in there. As Brandon's going to make his way through. This is one of the GT3s that he is going to get some space from.
And it's so valuable to get that seat time in the car on the track. Because the more time you have, the more laps you spin, the more muscle memory you build up. Granted, it's not always good for the conditions that could happen during the endurance race, but it at least teaches you the track, where the apex you need to hit is, and a lot more things.
It looks like our GT3 class is starting to make their last round of pit stops also.
Yeah, you can see Nathan Wright headed in, that AI driver. Looks like another one coming down the pit lane as well, with the other group staying out for now. Mark Sherman there in the background.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one of these guys wanted to add the AI tonight, but I don't think any of them are happy about it after being taken out by him.
That is true. Speaking of taking out, coming back onto the track from that pit lane is very scary, because that first corner is so fast that if your pit lane path and the first corner path come together, it is not good for either driver.
I'll be interested to see with this being a fun race if these guys don't, call a truce and get together and have like a 15-minute sprint shootout here at the end of the race.
I sure hope they do, because they all show around the same speed, and that's just a lot of fun to watch.
We got Mark Sherman being hounded by the Mercedes down the straightaway.
Oh, contact going into the last corner with that Mercedes. Mercedes dove inside, and Mark turned a little bit in on him.
AI Dano was not scared. He just threw it in there, which was actually a rather aggressive pass to be dipping onto pit lane. As you see, pit lane is very busy right now with GT3s.
Mark does look pretty smooth out there. He's doing a great job. All these pit stops, Patrick making his way up the leaderboard.
Yeah, I'm curious what happened with Mark early on is, I was looking back through it and I don't see anything major, no crashes or anything like that, but he did have to jump into the pits twice very early in the race. Looked like maybe around something on like lap 1 and then again on like lap 3, which is really what set him back. But the rest of his races actually look like it's gone pretty smooth.
Yeah, he is 4 laps behind, and we're about 47 laps in. So, if he's off pace by a second, then that's 47 seconds. It's almost half a lap. 2 seconds is maybe 3/4 of a lap, and then 3 seconds off pace would just be a lap. So I'm not really sure where those 3 laps came from.
Patrick now up to P6 in the GT3 classes. He's got that whole crew of AI GT3s coming right behind him here.
Imagine if Patrick did do the one stop and fuel saved enough to make it to the end, then he might actually have a shot of winning this thing.
I was trying to check to see if Patrick has come in to make his second pit stop, as it is getting late, but I remember he was one of the ones that hit later, almost at the 1 hour mark. So I don't know that he can get all the way to the end, but if he could, that would be a nice recovery as he's up 16 spots from where he started.
Yeah, to your point, it looks like he did pit basically at the hour mark. So if the top 5 in the class do end up pitting, then he's gonna be right there. And it looks like Matt Holden in 4th position is going to start dropping back as he pits. And that's Patrick around him for 5th place. So if Matt was sitting in 4th, then maybe a podium is possible for Patrick then.
I'm not sure if they have an incident limit for tonight's race or not, but it'd be interesting to see, what the incident count was for these guys, and if any of them are getting close to maybe having to do a drive-through, because there has been quite a few wheels dipped out there. This is great pace from Patrick, actually. His best time is a 2:01.6, and his last lap was a 2:02.2. He's still within 6/10 of what his best lap was. And at this point in the race, after you've been in the car for an hour and 40 minutes, that's just really good consistency.
We still have Rich Hibbs in the lead, followed by Brandon Dooley and then Morgan Teague. The gaps are pretty even, with Dooley about 10 seconds behind and then Teague about 12 seconds behind.
Hibbs squeezing the GT3 the edge of the track on entry so he can open up that corner there. Getting a little risky, but the gap is down to 8 seconds. So if he was holding back a little bit now, that's why, you might see him pushing a little bit more as he's going to try to open that gap back up.
Behind Hibbs is Dooley, and Dooley is slowly closing in, starting that mission back to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like, he's slowing down and letting him catch back up, or they're trying to, close it in. Rich's last lap was a 49 flat and Brandon ran a 48 flat. I don't know if that's the newer tires because he pit so much later, but he still has the traction in there, because it looked like Rich was struggling on corner exits a little bit as I saw him lighten up the rear when we were watching him.
And with only about 15 minutes left in this race, as of right now, Dooley would need about half a second every lap to gain on Hibbs if he wants to get back up in the first spot.
Yeah, last lap was 1 second. This lap that just went through was about 7/8 of a second. So he's got the pace right now if he can keep going at this rate. There's 15 minutes to go. We still have Rich Hibbs out front in the GTP class with Brandon Dooley in second and closing that gap. Morgan TV in third. In the GT3 class, EJ Majors is out front with Aussie Greg Hill in second place and Nathan Wright in third. And still, your undisputed champion, leader, never been beat, never been passed this race in the LMP division, Ray Welch. I mean, now that I look back, Ray's had an amazing race. He's led every single lap of the race. He has been so far out front. He has stopped for a sandwich, and he is still leading the race. It's an unbelievable drive.
It's simply incredible. I mean, when you talk lap after lap and nobody's ever able to even beat his lap time, nonetheless pass him, it's just insane what he's done tonight.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's seen him since the back.
He's too fast. They can't catch him. And the AI of Matt Holden that did pit earlier, that Patrick got around while he was in the pits, has now caught back up to him.
It looks like we may have had some contact between the GT3 AIs of John Henry and Susan Flint.
So here's John Henry here. Billy Susan's right in front of him. And the GTP coming through gets contact with him, slows him up. Not too bad.
No, not too bad, but you can see how that works. John was coming down the inside. He went for a late move down the inside as the GTP was also making a late move. And that's one of those situations like we talked about earlier where you can kind of set the pick, and as lap traffic's coming through, you can use it to your advantage sometimes. But it also becomes a risky move, right? The GTP is coming down the inside thinking he's going to make a pass. And then all of a sudden the GT3 dives in there, also trying to make a pass, and you both run out of real estate.
Oh, Patrick just had his hands full. Matt Holden trying to size him up down the backstretch, but gets him through the last corner. Oh, Brandon Dooley has crashed. What happened here? Just stepping that car out a little bit, and then too much power again, just stepping it even more.
Yeah, that setup coming out of the first S there, it looked like it lit the rear up a little bit, and he was just borderline trying to feather it, get the traction back, but also stay in the power, and just never really got it back, and then ended up just losing the rear coming out of there. But that's just a result of, he was pushing and slowly closing that gap, but he knew he was running out of time, and he just didn't want to lift coming out of there. The question is, what has that done to the tires? Because now Morgan is only 5 seconds back behind him, and if it takes him a little bit to recover from that, we could see Morgan making a run at Brandon here in the last 10 minutes of this race.
Yeah, typically I like to think of heated tires to take at least half a lap to a lap to get back to normal, and during that time you have to take it really easy. You're on the racetrack and you can't push as much.
Yeah, as we see Morgan come across the line with a 50.3 and Brandon at a 54.8. It'll be interesting to see what he can get that lap time down to this lap after recovering from that spin. You can tell there Brandon knows Morgan is pushing, because he was fighting through that GT3. He didn't want to waste any time sitting behind him and waiting for a straightaway. Just kind of forced himself by through the switchbacks to get a little bit of a gap here. Oh, it looks like TJ Major has made his final pit stop as Aussie Greg Hill is going to take over the lead in the GT3 class again. It'll be interesting to see now if Patrick's going to be able to make it to the end, or if he's going to have to pit here in the next 8 minutes.
Can see there, TV getting around Sherman. Oh, it looks like Patrick has actually pit. So he did not make it on fuel.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. With only being, 8 minutes shy, about 4 laps, it could be 3 to 4 laps around here. I wonder if, he's looking at that data for the 12-hour going, okay, we're a little bit shy on, we're about 2 minutes shy from getting to that hour stint. Is there any way that we can save a little bit of fuel, enough to where we can cut a pit stop at the end of the race? Like, that's what this race is going to be used for guys like him, is, he's out there just gathering data in that GT3 class right now.
And more breaking news. Rich Hibbs has crashed. Let's see what happened to Hibbs.
Oh no, while we're in replay, it looks like Tiggy has also crashed, as the gap was closing down between all of these guys.
Here we go for the replay of TV going into that last corner, carrying a lot of momentum, trying to steer it in, and just locks it up. That was a really good save by him.
Yeah, that could have been a lot worse if he kept the car sideways, got it stopped, and got going pretty quick. But this battle out front now with 6 minutes to go. It is only a 3-second gap between Rich Hibbs and Brandon Dooley. And what seemed like it might have been over 2 laps ago, now we have a fresh new battle here to the flag. This is going to be good.
We are on board with Dooley as he tries to navigate this traffic and then eventually catch Hibbs. Gets around Nathan right there, and then just ahead of him, you see Hibbs is right there, so he has him in his vision.
Yeah, he's got the dangling carrot there now, and he's also just close enough that if Rich looks up, he can see him in the distance in that rear view mirror, so now he's going to have to start thinking about that as we cross the line with 5 minutes to go.
And we've talked about how Hibbs and Tiki actually pit earlier, and that means that they'll have less fuel. So do they have enough to make it to the end, or do they need to fuel save and Dooley can catch back up?
I think that they're probably going to be all right on fuel. What I wonder, though, is Brandon pit quite a few laps later, so he's going to have fresher tires. And it's just a matter of, with those spins, how much did they damage the tires? How much can they get out of it? But like I say, for most of this race, Brandon has looked the best on corner exits. So I imagine that he's going to be looking to close this gap up. See him wide entry, good apex speed, all the way back out to the very edge of the curb. He's using every inch of the track as he can as he tries to close this down. I believe we're going to be coming up here to 2 laps to go as there's only 3 minutes left in this race. As the lap times come across the board, Dooley takes another half a second out of Hibbs' lead, with now the gap down to 2 seconds. Any mistake and he is going to be right there on the bumper. Now, if you're Rich Hibbs out front right now, 2-second gap, you're looking at 2 laps to go. What's going through your mind right now, Nathan?
Really just stay consistent, hit your marks, focus as much as possible on every point of the track. We always talk about brake markers and where that apex is, right? So like every point that you have in your mind about the track, you have to hit those to keep your gap.
Yeah, you have to think about 2 seconds is it does not look like much, and at the end of 2 hours, it doesn't feel like much, but it's a pretty decent gap when we're talking about car racing. A fast lap, these guys gain, half a second at the most, but we're talking about tenths gained each lap. You can't make a mistake and miss an apex and go off track and throw away, a second here or there. You're better off, dropping the 2 or 3 tenths in a lap and making sure that you hit all your lines clean here to the finish. can't tell if we got the white flag this lap or not, or if we're gonna get one more after this.
It looks like Morgan T actually crashed, so let's take a look at this. Looks like same thing as before, pretty much. Or actually, that might be the old crash. That's the old crash. Never mind.
I don't know if you can see the flags on your end. Is this the final lap here or not yet? As we do see Brandon catching some GT3 cars at a very unfortunate time.
Oh, and he's way off the track trying to get around him.
A little green lane there for the express line, holding it wide open. You know he did not lift through that at all.
I believe this lap we might actually get that white flag. Try to watch the flag. Looks like that's checkered, so Hibbs coming across the finish line in first in the GTP. And then we have, oh, Hibbs doing some donuts there, celebrating. Brandon Dooley getting that second place finish, and then Morgan Tiki trying to wrap this up.
Yeah, congrats to iRace Controls, Rich Hibbs, and also the Dark Speed Endurance team there, as they're going to come home in second and third in the GTP class. Still waiting for the GT3s to finish up their lap, as Aussie Greg Hill is still leading that. And Gray Welps will take home the win in the LMP division.
Yeah, it looks like the GT3s probably just finished up not too long ago. Out of AI drivers, Aussie Greg Hill wins, and then out of real drivers, Patrick Hemavit, followed by Mark Sherman sticking it out. Good job, guys.
Absolutely. What a race out there. I wonder if we can get any of these guys in here for an interview now.
Well, to those who made it to the end, thanks for coming out.
We'll hold off for a minute and see if we can get Rich Hibbs in here to talk about this big win. There he is. Can you hear us, Rich?
Yeah, can hear you.
All right. First off, congratulations on that win out there. It was a wild ride, ups and downs. How'd it feel?
My arms are pretty pumped up. That's a lot of fighting to do with a GTP, but the tires are definitely a lot to learn in this car right now.
Yeah, we went on board for a couple laps with you guys as it looked really smooth when you guys were going around the track. And then we went on board and we could tell you guys are fighting the wheel a lot out there.
Yeah, for the second stint, I didn't take tires to see if the tire warm up is detrimental, and it turns out it's really detrimental to not take tires. So Brandon took tires, I didn't, and Morgan didn't, and we were all fighting just to hold on for dear life, while Brandon had pretty good tires under him. So it was a learning experience.
Yeah, we were watching the first couple laps and it looked like it took about 2 or 3 laps to get up to pace. And then that last stint, it looked like you and Morgan were fighting the car on corner exit a little more, and Brandon was just getting a lot of traction out of there. But 2 hour race in the books. some testing done. How do you feel for the 12-hour coming up?
Still a bit of work to do. Setups still need a bit of work to refine, but figured out a lot of strategy stuff tonight, so that was good. So we're pretty happy with the prep.
That's good. Well, congrats on the win tonight. Any shout outs you want to give?
Just to iRace Control, the software that makes race control so much easier.
All right, man. Thank you for joining us here, and I'll let Nathan take the next one.
All right. Brandon Dooley, how was
What's
your
up?
day, sir?
I was good. First off, thanks for you guys. I'm excited to watch it back and hear you guys the whole time. Appreciate you guys hanging out in the booth and doing that. Well, that was cool of you guys. My race was is good. Qualifying was okay. I was nervous to do anything on low fuel because I have not. That's not my department, so I haven't practiced anything. But so I just ran full fuel for that, and then I totally hung myself out to dry halfway through the first lap of the race and playing catch up from there. Fortunately, everybody else had some issues. And then, like Rich was saying, kind of came in halfway. At the first pit stop, I took tires. The other two guys did not. So it was nice to see the differences in pace and what you could and couldn't do. But yeah, so overall it was good. A couple too many mistakes for my liking, but we'll get that cleaned up for the weekend.
Yeah, and we did notice you and Hibbs did have those mishaps at the beginning of the race, and for the most part ran together. But as the pit stop started happening, especially that last one, what were you thinking when Tiki and Hibbs came in the pits at the same time, and you stayed out for a little longer?
Well, I knew that they were doing it, so we were in the same booth talking. They hit the 45 minutes to go. They were then free to pit on their stint and a half old tires. So they went in to get fresh tires, and they were going to make it to the end from there. Knowing I was going to have another stop, but then I had a bad decision on my part coming into turn like 15 complex over there towards the Almond Straight right before that with an AI GT3. Just tried to get up the inside of the first double left, and we unfortunately attached, did the iRacing glue trick for the next little bit, and then it spit me off. So lost quite a bit of time there, and then I'm the wrong way. So I went ahead and did my pit stop, and then knowing I've lost first, and was going to come out in between the two of them.
We saw a few lead changes tonight overall, and how much do you think the tires affected the race in general for the GTPs?
I mean, I think it was pretty significant. When I came out on fresh tires beyond my first out lap that was slow, I immediately started reeling Morgan in, and then had pace, especially out of corners. I was getting a ton more grip coming out to be able to pull back in and maybe even brake a little bit later going into stuff. So I think it's pretty significant. We were on the fence about, is double stinting going to be worth it? I think the time difference isn't going to make it a thing right now. So maybe in the future, when they limit us to, like they do in the real world, to you only get X amount of sets of tires, and we're forced to double stint, it's still looking like the right option is going to be to take tires.
And you gave a heck of a show battling with the leaders at times too. And congrats on second overall. And Ricky, back over to you. Sorry, any shout outs, Dooley, before we drop you?
Oh yeah, no, just thanks to the Dark Speed Endurance team, Rich and Morgan, always heck of a good team. Rich with the setup. I was running one of his new test setups tonight. Felt solid. So yeah, shout out to those guys. Thanks for letting me drive with them.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
All right, Morgan, bringing it home P3 tonight. You had a little bit of an uneventful first stint out there for about the first half of the race. Those guys tangled up a little bit and left you out there all by yourself. You were up to about a 15-second lead at one point. We were sitting up here wondering what's going through your mind at that point in the race. Are you thinking about opening the gap up more, or are you just trying to play it safe, especially getting through the lap traffic?
It's a good question. Yeah, I started fuel saving just to see what that would be like. How much could I fuel save and still keep a semi-competitive pace? Just because we haven't done that kind of testing yet. So that was the strategy there at the beginning. It seemed to be fairly close on pace while being able to save quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like with the new tire model, the traction and the mid corner speed is quite a bit slower.
Oh
I
yeah.
imagine it's a lot harder to push, so when you are fuel saving, you can still carry that minimum speed through the apex a lot easier.
Yeah, that seemed to be easier, and because you were, you know, just a little more gentle overall with the fuel saving strategy. It seemed to keep the tires happier longer. I noticed when I started to push the second and third stints, the tires were not happy once you got them into an unfavorable temperature range.
Yeah, for sure. We hopped on board with you and Brandon back to back, and you could tell just how much more you were having to work the wheel, like towards the end of that second stint after he took fresh tires, and it definitely looked a little tricky. I
Oh yeah.
don't know whose whose decision it was to add the AI into tonight's race, but how did you feel about them out there at some points?
Uh, the AI is interesting. Is definitely pretty strong for a GT3 pace. We were getting some feedback from those that were in the GTDs rather, and they're doing some interesting things. But there are also things that we see in real life. I mean, I saw quite a few of them decide to lift on corner exit and pull to the inside to let me by when I wasn't anticipating it. And I had already set up to go around the inside myself. So they certainly made it interesting. It uh, felt pretty realistic in terms of the unpredictability that we sometimes see out there.
Yeah, for sure. We loved it. It gave us some interesting things to happen throughout the race. And I did notice it was a little bit tricky for us at sometimes to distinguish if it was AI or an actual driver because they were getting lapped, they were pulling out of the way, and when one would pull out of the way, another one would actually dive down the inside to make a pass. And it was just characteristics that you don't normally see with them. But it was cool to have them out there and see you guys having to go through them and navigate that also.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Well, congrats on the P3. Anybody that you want to give shout outs to?
No, thank you. Thank you to you guys for hanging out in the booth and doing this. Like Brandon said, I'm looking forward to watching it back and seeing seeing the action through your eyes. So that's super cool. Thanks for doing that, and thanks to everybody that came out today.
No problem. We'll save you the time. You don't have to watch it. It was amazing. That's all you need to know. It was fantastic, top notch. Oh, but yeah, congrats to you guys out there, and I'll let Nathan take over with Mark. We'll get him in here.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Mark, we noticed you were had a couple bobbles at the beginning of the race, and then somewhere along the line fell a few laps behind. What happened in your race to drop you about 4 laps behind? We think you should only been like maybe a lap or two tops.
Well, yeah, I had some unfortunate stuff happen at the beginning, but my pace was really good. Um, most of my laps were really consistent once I got going, and a shame that, I did fall a few laps down, but the rest of my race felt really good. The Cookie Monster machine was holding in there, ran great the whole time. And yeah, just can't thank my pit crew enough for getting the car rebuilt and getting me back out on track to finish the race.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, don't worry, Mark. We got you. We got you.
I pulled him down here. He might have stepped away, so I didn't want to leave him by himself in the lobby Discord and him still talking, but he might have stepped away.
Yeah, no worries. But that's gonna wrap it up for us tonight here at Sebring for the DHRL Fun Race. If anybody, wants to get in, got the league running on, I believe, Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. Drop a line in the comments. Someone can get you lined up so that you can join the action. But other than that, thanks to you guys for having a great race and having us up here in the booth. And that's gonna be it for us. Have a good one.